I stood outside my sister Madison's university graduation ceremony, heart pounding wildly as my father's cruel words echoed in my mind. "You're an embarrassment, don't show up." 5 years ago, I was kicked out of this same university for academic dishonesty, a false accusation that destroyed my reputation and shattered my family relationships. Today, despite his warning, I returned not as the family failure, but as the CEO of the tech company that revolutionized the university's research program. No one knows my true identity yet, but they're about to learn exactly who Wright really is. The campus hadn't changed much in 5 years. The sprawling oak trees still lined the main quad, and students still rushed across the lawns in their caps and gowns, faces bright with hope and possibility. I remembered that feeling before everything fell apart. My family used to be close. Dinner table conversations filled with laughter and debates. My father, Dr. Harold Wright, beaming with pride when I got accepted to his alma mater. My mother, Evelyn, hanging my acceptance letter on the refrigerator. Even Madison, 3 years younger, and always living in my academic shadow, had hugged me tight and whispered, "Show them what the Wright sisters can do." But all that warmth evaporated in a single afternoon 5 years ago. I was a junior, then top of my computer science class. My algorithm project was turning heads, a revolutionary approach to adaptive learning systems that could transform how educational software responded to student needs. Professor Larkin had even called it potentially groundbreaking. I spent countless nights coding in the lab, perfecting every line. Then came the accusation. "Miss Wright, we have evidence that you stole your project code from another student," Dean Carson said, sliding a folder across his desk. "That's impossible." I protested, my hands shaking as I opened the folder to find printouts of code that looked similar to mine, but with timestamps predating my submissions. "This isn't right. I wrote every line myself." But Professor Larkin stood behind the dean, arms crossed. "The evidence is clear, Dorothy. Jason's work was submitted first. Jason Turner, the professor's son, the mediocre student who had asked me out 3 times and whom I had rejected 3 times. Now suddenly, he had created an algorithm suspiciously similar to mine. Within 48 hours, the university's Academic Integrity Committee had convened. No thorough investigation, no technical analysis of the code to show its evolution. Just a rapid judgment that left me expelled. When I arrived home, shell-shocked and desperate for support, my father was waiting. Not with open arms, but with fury in his eyes. "How could you?" he shouted. 30 years I've donated to that university, served on their board, recommended countless students. And you repay me with this disgrace? "Dad, please listen," I begged. "The accusation is false. Jason Turner stole my work, not the other way around." But my father wouldn't hear it. As a respected neurosurgeon and major donor, his reputation meant everything. And now his daughter had tarnished the right name. "I don't want excuses," he snapped. "You're an adult. Take responsibility for your actions." My mother stood silently in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Madison hid upstairs, too afraid to witness the confrontation. "I need you out of this house," my father finally said. "Until you can admit what you've done and make amends, you're not welcome here." That night I packed a single suitcase and moved into my old Honda Civic. For 2 weeks I lived in that car, showering at a gym, applying for any job that would take a disgraced, almost graduate. But the final betrayal came a week after my expulsion. While using a public library computer to job search, I impulsively checked my old university email one last time before it was deactivated. There, buried in a folder, was an email from Professor Larkin to my father, sent 3 days before my expulsion. "Harold, as promised, I've taken care of the situation with Dorothy. After she refused Jason's advances multiple times, I became concerned about her judgment and priorities. This should serve as the course correction we discussed. Sometimes tough love is necessary." My father had known. He had participated in my downfall because I wouldn't date my professor's son. I printed that email, folded it carefully, and tucked it into my wallet. It became both my deepest wound and my strongest motivation. If my own father could betray me so completely, I would need to rebuild my life entirely on my own terms. Living in your car changes you. The constant search for safe parking spots, the awkward sponge baths in public restrooms, the shame when someone taps on your window at 3 in the morning telling you to move along. After 2 weeks, I landed a job at JavaScripted, a coffee shop near the business district. The pay was minimum wage, but the manager let me work opening shifts, which meant I could shower in the staff bathroom before customers arrived. That's where I met Travis Phillips. 6'2", perpetually rumpled button-down shirts, and the kind of customer who actually cleaned up after himself. He came in every morning at 6:30 for a black coffee and blueberry muffin, then worked on his laptop until 9. "What are you coding?" I asked one slow morning, unable to contain my curiosity as I glimpsed complex algorithms on his screen. Travis looked up surprised. "You recognize this? Binary search trees with conditional probability weighting," I said, then immediately regretted my eagerness. Smart girls made people uncomfortable, especially smart girls serving coffee. But Travis's face lit up. "Exactly. But I can't get the weighting function to scale properly for large datasets." Before I knew it, I was scribbling solutions on napkins deep in conversation about optimization strategies. Travis listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that revealed his own expertise. "Where did you study?" he finally asked. The question hit like a punch to the stomach. "I didn't finish," I said curtly, turning away to wipe down the counter. Travis didn't press, but the next morning he returned with a business card. "I work at Innosphere. Small startup. Trying to build educational software. We need someone with your brain. No degree required. Just skill." 2 days later, I interviewed with Sally Foster, Innosphere's founder and CEO, a 50-something woman with silver hair and piercing eyes. She gave me a coding test on the spot, which I completed in half the allotted time. "When can you start?" she asked. The pay wasn't great, barely above my barista salary, but it was a foot in the door. I found a tiny studio apartment with thin walls and a leaky faucet, but it was mine. For the first time since my expulsion, I slept on a real bed. Innosphere was struggling. Our main product was a learning management system for universities competing against established giants. We had 8 employees working in a converted warehouse space, sharing 3 functioning computers. For 8 months, I kept my head down coding what I was told. But at night in my apartment, I returned to my original algorithm, the one I'd been accused of stealing. I refined it, expanded its applications, and documented every step meticulously. Then disaster struck. Sally called an emergency meeting. "We're running out of money," she announced, her normally confident voice wavering. "We have enough for 3 more payrolls. Maybe 4. Without new investment or a revolutionary product, Innosphere will close by summer." That night, I couldn't sleep. Innosphere had given me a chance when no one else would. The thought of Travis and the others losing their jobs made my chest tight. By morning, I'd made my decision. I requested a private meeting with Sally and brought my laptop. "I have something that might help," I said, opening my algorithm project. Sally's eyes widened as I explained the adaptive learning system I'd built. "This is extraordinary," she whispered, scrolling through my code. "With this, we could transform our entire platform. Why didn't you show me this months ago?" I hesitated, then shared a abbreviated version of my expulsion story. Sally listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly outraged. "We'll protect your work this time," she promised. "Let's get legal involved immediately to document your ownership." For 6 frantic weeks, the entire team worked to integrate my algorithm into our platform. Sally arranged demonstrations for potential investors, and for the first time, people were excited about Innosphere's potential. Then the morning of our biggest investor presentation, Travis called me in tears. "Sally's gone. Heart attack last night. They couldn't save her." The office fell into chaos. The board members arrived grim-faced and uncertain. Without Sally's vision and leadership, would investors still believe in us? "We need to cancel the presentation," said Frank Westfield, the head of the board. "No one's ready to take Sally's place." "I am," I said, surprising myself as much as everyone else. I know this technology better than anyone. I know what it can do. Let me present. Frank looked skeptical. You're our newest employee, and I created the algorithm that's going to save this company, I countered. Give me 30 minutes with these investors. If they're not convinced, I'll step aside, perhaps out of desperation, or perhaps seeing something in my determination. Frank agreed. That afternoon, I stood before 4 venture capitalists in Sally's hastily cleaned office, wearing my only professional outfit, a navy blue dress from a thrift store. For 45 minutes, I explained my algorithm, demonstrated its applications, and outlined my vision for InnoSphere's future. When I finished, there was silence. Then, Andrew Morton, the lead investor, turned to Frank. We're prepared to offer $8 million in funding conditional on Dorothy taking the CEO position. Frank nearly choked. She's 23 years old with no management experience. She's also the most impressive technical mind I've met this year, Andrew replied. We're investing in her vision. She leads, or we walk. That night, as interim CEO with a 3-month probationary period, I sat alone in Sally's former office, overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility. 8 people's jobs rested on my shoulders. Sally's legacy was in my hands. I opened my desk drawer and found a small framed photo of Sally with the original InnoSphere team. I placed it prominently on my desk, a reminder of who had believed in me first. I won't let you down, I whispered to her smiling image. Then I turned to my computer and began to work. 2 years can change everything. InnoSphere grew from 8 employees to 83. Our educational software platform, built around my adaptive learning algorithm, was implemented in 27 universities nationwide. The board had long since removed interim from my CEO title, and our original investors had tripled their money. I now had an office with a view of downtown, a wardrobe of clothes that actually fit, and enough money in my bank account to never worry about housing again. From the outside, I had achieved the American dream, the college dropout who became a tech success story. But success hadn't healed all wounds. You need to get out more, Travis insisted one evening, as we reviewed quarterly projections. As my chief operating officer, he was the only person from the original team who knew my full story. All you do is work. When was the last time you went on a date, had dinner with a friend, anything that wasn't InnoSphere related? I ignored his concern, pointing to our growth metrics. We're expanding too quickly in the community college sector. The infrastructure costs are... Travis interrupted, using the nickname that had stuck since our coffee shop days. You're changing the subject. Because the subject is irrelevant, I replied coolly. I'm fine. But I wasn't fine. I lived in a spacious downtown apartment that still felt empty. I checked news from my hometown compulsively, but never reached out to my family. I'd legally changed my last name from Wright to Walsh, professionally severing the last public connection to my past. Despite my professional confidence, I still startled when men raised their voices in meetings. I struggled with insomnia, often working until 3 or 4 in the morning, because sleep brought nightmares of my father's rejection. I maintained careful distance from everyone except Travis, afraid to trust and be betrayed again. The only personal project I pursued was the InnoSphere Second Chance Scholarship, which provided full tuition and living expenses to students who had faced academic disciplinary actions and could demonstrate they were wrongfully accused. Each year, we selected 5 recipients, and I personally reviewed every application. You're trying to save other versions of yourself, Travis observed when I established the fund. Someone should, I replied simply. That spring, as we prepared to announce our 3rd round of scholarship recipients, a familiar name appeared in my inbox. Professor Alan Larkin. The subject line read, Research Partnership Opportunity. My hands trembled as I opened the email. To the CEO of InnoSphere. I lead the computer science department at Westridge University. Your adaptive learning platform has revolutionized educational technology, and aspects of its algorithmic approach align remarkably with research I've been developing for years. I propose a research partnership between Westridge and InnoSphere to further develop these concepts. Such collaboration would benefit both your company and our institution. I look forward to discussing this opportunity. Professor Alan Larkin, PhD Chair of Computer Science, Westridge University. He didn't recognize my name. He had no idea that the CEO of Innosphere was the student he had wrongfully accused and expelled. The student whose work he was now implicitly claiming had connections to his own research. My first instinct was to delete the email and block the address. My second was to respond with a scathing revelation of my identity and a threat to expose his past actions. I did neither. Instead, I forwarded the email to our legal team with a note: research this professor's recent publications. I want to know if he's been referencing my algorithm without attribution. 3 days later, the answer came back. In 2 recent academic papers, Professor Larkin had described novel approaches to adaptive learning systems that bore striking similarities to my work. He never directly claimed to have created these approaches, but the papers were carefully worded to suggest they emerged from his department's research. Travis found me staring at these papers late that evening. "What are you going to do?" he asked after I explained the situation. "Nothing. Yet." I closed my laptop. Revenge served immediately is just retaliation. Revenge served cold is justice. That sounds ominous, Travis said, looking concerned. I managed a small smile. Don't worry. I'm not planning anything illegal or unethical. But Professor Larkin made a serious mistake reaching out to Innosphere. He's created an opportunity I intend to use when the time is right. That night I finally slept without nightmares. For the first time in years, I felt something like peace. Not because I planned to destroy Professor Larkin, but because I finally had the power to reclaim my story on my own terms. I just needed the perfect moment. The perfect moment arrived in an unexpected form 3 weeks later. I was reviewing applications for our next scholarship cohort when Travis knocked on my office door, an unusual expression on his face. "You need to see this," he said, placing a university alumni newsletter on my desk. There, on page 3, was a photo of my sister Madison in academic regalia with the caption, "Madison Wright to graduate summa cum laude in computer science under the mentorship of distinguished Professor Alan Larkin." My stomach lurched. Madison had followed in my footsteps, studying computer science at the same university that had expelled me. And worse, she was Larkin's student. "Are you okay?" Travis asked gently. "I'm fine," I said automatically, though my hands were shaking. I just didn't know she was graduating this year. That night, I broke my own rule and Googled my family. My father's medical practice website showed him still performing neurosurgery. My mother's social media revealed she was active in the hospital auxiliary board. And Madison, brilliant Madison, had published 2 papers as an undergraduate and received a prestigious graduate school fellowship. On impulse, I contacted the university's financial aid office through Innosphere's educational partnership channels. Using my CEO authority, I arranged for an anonymous donor to pay off Madison's remaining student loans as a merit-based grant for exceptional computer science graduates. She would never know it came from me. I was closing this chapter when my assistant knocked on my door. "There's a Dean Carson from Westridge University asking to speak with you. He says it's about a potential major partnership." Dean Thomas Carson, the same man who had approved my expulsion 5 years ago. "Put him through," I said, straightening my posture, even though this was just a phone call. "Miss Walsh," Dean Carson began warmly, "I've been following Innosphere's remarkable growth. Your adaptive learning platform is exactly what Westridge has been seeking for our digital transformation initiative." I maintained professional detachment as he explained the university's interest in a multi-million-dollar partnership. Innosphere would provide our platform to the entire university while receiving access to research facilities and faculty expertise. "We'd like to announce this at our upcoming graduation ceremony," he continued. "Perhaps you could attend personally. It would be a significant statement to have a tech innovator of your caliber on stage." The graduation ceremony, where Madison would be receiving her diploma, where Professor Larkin would be honoring his star student, where my father would undoubtedly be sitting in the front row. "I'll need to check my schedule," I said noncommittally. "Please have your team send over the partnership details." After hanging up, I sat motionless, staring out my office window. The universe was offering me an extraordinary opportunity, or setting a cruel trap. I hadn't seen my family in 5 years. They had no idea what had become of me, or that Dorothy Wright was now Walsh, CEO of Innosphere. The next morning brought another surprise. An email appeared in my company inbox. Dear Miss Walsh, as this year's graduating class speaker for Westridge University's Computer Science Department, I'm reaching out to invite you to our graduation ceremony. Your company's innovations have transformed educational technology, and many of us have studied your platform in our advanced courses. Having a successful female tech CEO attend would be incredibly meaningful, especially to women in our program. If you could share a few words of inspiration, it would make our ceremony truly memorable. Sincerely, Madison Wright, Senior Computer Science. My own sister had invited me to her graduation, having no idea she was writing to me. The irony was almost too much to bear. I forwarded both invitations to Travis, adding only, "What would you do?" His response came minutes later. I'd go. But I'd be prepared for anything. I was still contemplating this decision when our legal department sent their weekly intellectual property monitoring report. One item was flagged in red. Professor Alan Larkin had just published a paper explicitly referencing the algorithmic foundations first conceptualized in my research lab that were now being commercialized by companies like Innosphere. He wasn't just implying connection to my work anymore. He was claiming origination. That settled it. I instructed our legal team to prepare documentation proving my algorithm's development timeline. I had Travis book me a flight to Westridge, and I accepted both Dean Carson's partnership proposal and Madison's invitation. As preparations continued, a text message arrived from a number I still had memorized, though I hadn't seen it in 5 years. My father. I've heard rumors that Innosphere's CEO may attend Madison's graduation. If that's you, Dorothy, please respect our family's wishes. You're an embarrassment, don't show up. So he knew. Or at least he suspected. And he was still trying to control me. Still trying to hide the family's shame. I showed the message to Travis as we finalized travel arrangements. Are you sure about this? He asked, concern evident in his voice. It could get ugly. I tucked my phone away. Some things need to get ugly before they can get better. The night before the graduation in my hotel room, I laid out the next day's outfit, a tailored charcoal gray suit, crisp white blouse, and the subtle Innosphere logo pin on the lapel. Professional, confident, unmistakably successful. I also prepared a folder containing 3 documents, my original algorithm development notes with verifiable timestamps, Professor Larkin's email to my father from 5 years ago, and a new ethics initiative proposal for Westridge University that would transform how academic integrity cases were handled. Tomorrow would change everything for the university, for Professor Larkin, for my family, and for me. As I finally drifted to sleep, I wasn't dreaming of revenge. I was dreaming of something I hadn't allowed myself to want in years: the truth. The spring morning dawned, clear and bright sunlight streaming through my hotel room curtains as I prepared for the day that would change everything. I spent extra time on my appearance, ensuring every detail projected confidence and success. The woman in the mirror looked nothing like the broken, betrayed student who had been expelled 5 years ago. The graduation ceremony was being held in the university's grand auditorium, decorated with blue and silver banners. I arrived deliberately late when most guests were already seated, and was immediately escorted to the VIP entrance by Dean Carson's assistant. "Miss Walsh, we're honored you could join us," the assistant gushed. "Dean Carson has reserved a seat for you on stage, with the faculty and distinguished guests." Perfect. I would be visible to everyone, including my family. From the wings of the stage, I scanned the audience. There, in the front row of the family section, sat my parents. My father looked distinguished as always in his dark suit, his posture rigid with pride. My mother beside him, elegantly dressed, smiling politely at those around her. They looked exactly the same, as if 5 years without their eldest daughter had affected them not at all. The ceremony began with the traditional processional graduating students filing in to pomp and circumstance. I spotted Madison immediately, her honors cords and medals marking her as a top graduate. She looked more mature, confident, so different from the quiet teenager I'd left behind. Dean Carson approached the podium for his opening remarks, welcoming families and introducing the stage party. When he reached my name, there was a special emphasis, and we're particularly honored to have with us today Ms. Dot Walsh, CEO of Innosphere Technologies, who will be announcing an exciting new partnership with Westridge University. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I kept my expression neutral, watching as Professor Larkin, seated 2 chairs away from me, snapped to attention at my introduction. He studied me with narrowed eyes, confusion gradually giving way to dawning recognition, and then most satisfyingly alarm. The ceremony proceeded with various speeches and recognitions. Then came the student address, delivered by graduating senior and department star, Madison Wright. Madison approached the podium confidently, her speech focusing on perseverance and the future of technology. She was articulate and thoughtful, so much more assured than the shy sister I remembered. In conclusion, Madison said, "We stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, learning from both their successes and their failures. Today marks not an ending, but a beginning of our opportunity to create positive change." The irony of her words wasn't lost on me. She had no idea how much change was about to unfold. After Madison's speech, Dean Carson returned to the podium. Before we begin conferring degrees, I'd like to invite Miss Walsh to share our exciting announcement. As I rose from my seat, I caught Professor Larkin staring at me, his face now ashen. He knew. He finally recognized the student he had wrongfully accused, now returning as a powerful CEO. I approached the podium with measured steps, placing my folder beside the microphone. The auditorium fell silent. "Thank you, Dean Carson. It's a unique experience returning to Westridge University." I paused, letting the word "returning" hang in the air. Today, I'm pleased to announce that Innosphere Technologies will be establishing a $10 million partnership with Westridge University to implement our adaptive learning platform across all departments. Applause broke out with Dean Carson beaming beside me. This partnership, I continued once the applause subsided, will include a special focus on ethics in education and research integrity. Innosphere believes strongly that academic institutions must prioritize truth and fairness, especially when examining allegations of misconduct. The applause grew more uncertain. Dean Carson's smile faltered slightly. Our company was founded on an algorithm I created as a student, an algorithm that revolutionized adaptive learning systems. Some of you may find it interesting that this algorithm was originally developed right here at Westridge University. I looked directly at Professor Larkin, whose complexion had gone from ashen to gray. In fact, some present today might recall when a student was accused of stealing this very algorithm, an accusation that resulted in her immediate expulsion without proper investigation. The audience was completely silent now. In the front row, my father had gone rigid, while my mother covered her mouth with her hand. Madison, seated with her fellow graduates, was staring at me with widening eyes. That student was me. My name then was Dorothy Wright. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. I saw Madison stand abruptly, then sink back into her chair as a friend pulled at her arm. Fortunately, I meticulously documented my work. I continued, my voice steady, despite my pounding heart. Today, as part of our new partnership, Innosphere will be funding an Ethics in Academia program, ensuring that all academic integrity cases receive thorough, impartial investigation. I turned slightly toward Professor Larkin. We'll also be implementing new conflict of interest protocols, preventing situations where faculty might use academic penalties against students who refuse romantic advances from their family members. Professor Larkin half rose from his seat, but Dean Carson, now understanding the implications, subtly motioned for him to remain seated. The Innosphere Second Chance Scholarship will also establish a special fund at Westridge, supporting students who can demonstrate they were wrongfully accused of academic misconduct. I glanced toward my family again. My father was staring at the floor. My mother was openly crying. Madison looked stunned, her gaze fixed on me with an expression of dawning comprehension. Success shouldn't require losing everything first, as I did. But for those who have lost their way, remember this: your worth isn't determined by others' judgments, but by your own integrity and perseverance. I closed my folder. Innosphere looks forward to this transformative partnership with Westridge University. We believe in second chances for institutions as well as individuals. As I stepped away from the podium, Dean Carson quickly moved to retake control of the ceremony, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. In the audience, people were whispering, heads turning toward my family, then back to me, then to Professor Larkin, who remained frozen in his seat. During the awarding of diplomas, I watched Madison cross the stage. When her name was called, she looked directly at me rather than at the dean handing her the diploma. There was something in her eyes, recognition, shock, and perhaps a glimmer of admiration. As Madison returned to her seat, I noticed Professor Larkin attempting to slip away discreetly through a side door. He was intercepted by two members of the university's legal council, who had been seated in the back and were now very interested in speaking with him. The remainder of the ceremony passed in a blur of names and polite applause. When it concluded, the auditorium erupted in chaotic movement. Students searching for families, faculty trying to maintain order, and in the midst of it all, a bubble of stunned silence surrounding my parents. Madison broke away from her classmates, pushing through the crowd toward the stage. Our eyes met across the distance, 5 years of separation collapsing in an instant. Behind me, Dean Carson touched my arm. "Miss Walsh, I think we should continue this conversation in my office." "Not yet," I said firmly. "There's a family matter I need to address first." As I stepped down from the stage, the crowd parted before me. Madison reached me first, tears streaming down her face. "Dot," she whispered, using the nickname from our childhood. "Is it really you?" Before I could answer, she threw her arms around me, her body shaking with sobs. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't stand up for you." I found myself hugging her back, my carefully constructed professional facade crumbling under the weight of my sister's genuine remorse. Over Madison's shoulder, I saw my parents approaching slowly. My mother's face streaked with tears, my father's expression unreadable. The reckoning I had both dreaded and longed for was finally at hand. "Perhaps we should find somewhere more private," Dean Carson suggested, eyeing the growing crowd of curious onlookers. I nodded still, holding Madison, who seemed unwilling to let me go. "There's a conference room adjacent to the auditorium," the dean offered. As we moved toward the exit, a reporter from the university paper called out, "Miss Walsh, can you comment on your allegations against Professor Larkin?" "My legal team will be providing a full statement tomorrow," I replied without breaking stride. The conference room was mercifully empty and surprisingly calm after the chaos of the auditorium. Madison finally released me, wiping her eyes, but staying close as if afraid I might disappear again. My mother approached next, her hands fluttering nervously before she reached for mine. "Dorothy," she whispered, "I can't believe it's you. You look so different." "It's Dot now," I corrected gently. "And yes, a lot has changed." My father remained by the door, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. The mighty Dr. Harold Wright reduced to uncomfortable silence in the face of his greatest mistake. Dean Carson cleared his throat. "I should leave you to your family reunion. But Miss Walsh, I do hope we can discuss the circumstances of your departure from Westridge. We'll speak tomorrow, Dean Carson. 9 a.m. your office. Please ensure your legal counsel is present. Mine will be." The dean nodded stiffly and departed, closing the door behind him. For a moment, no one spoke. The air felt charged with 5 years of unspoken words, accusations, and regrets. Madison broke the silence. "I always suspected you were innocent," she said, her voice small. "The Dot I knew would never cheat. But I was 19, and scared, and I didn't know how to stand up to Dad." "You would have been standing alone," I acknowledged. "I don't blame you, Madison." "You should," she insisted. "I was a coward." My mother stepped forward. "We all were," she admitted, tears forming again. "I found some inconsistencies in the university's report. About 6 months after you left. Things that didn't add up. But your father was so adamant, and I chose peace over truth." "You chose wrong," I said flatly. My mother flinched but nodded. "Yes, we did." My father finally moved from his position by the door, his steps hesitant. The confident surgeon seemed diminished, somehow uncertain, in a way I'd never witnessed. "You've done well for yourself," he said stiffly. "Inosphere is impressive, not an apology." Not even an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Just a grudging recognition of my success. Is that all you have to say? Madison asked incredulously. Dot was expelled because of a lie, and all you can talk about is her company. My father's jaw tightened. The university made the decision to expel her, not me. After you spoke with Professor Larkin, I countered. After you decided I was guilty without hearing my side. The evidence seemed clear, he insisted. I reached into my folder and withdrew the email, pushing it across the conference table toward him. This evidence seems pretty clear, too. He picked up the paper, his expression changing, as he read Professor Larkin's words from 5 years ago. As promised, I've taken care of the situation with Dorothy. After she refused Jason's advances multiple times. Where did you get this? He demanded, his voice hoarse. It was in my university email. I found it a week after you threw me out. Professor Larkin reached out to you before the academic integrity hearing. You knew him. You arranged something with him. Hi. And then you discarded me to protect your precious reputation. My mother gasped. Harold, what did you do? My father sank into a chair, the email trembling in his hand. It wasn't like that. Alan mentioned his concerns about Dorothy's relationship with his son. I simply suggested that if there was a disciplinary issue, it should be handled according to university policy. That's not what the email says, Madison interjected, reading over our father's shoulder. It says, as promised, and the course correction we discussed. You knew what he was going to do. I didn't know he would fabricate evidence, my father snapped. I thought you had actually done something wrong and he was just ensuring the proper procedures were followed. You never asked me, I said quietly. You never once asked for my side of the story. Your first response was to tell me what an embarrassment I was. A sharp knock interrupted us. Travis stood in the doorway holding a tablet. Sorry to interrupt, he said, glancing around the room. But there's something you all need to hear. Everyone, this is Travis Phillips, Innosphere's COO. I introduced him. Travis, my family. Travis nodded briefly before placing his tablet on the table and pressing play. Professor Larkin's voice filled the room. Of course I fabricated the evidence. That little princess thought she was too good for my Jason. Turns out she was too good for Westridge, too. Harold Wright was happy to have her taken down a peg, worried about her getting too independent. We both got what we wanted. Now, about this research partnership. Travis stopped the recording. This was captured 40 minutes ago when Professor Larkin thought he was speaking privately to one of our research directors. We've already forwarded copies to the university's legal department and board of trustees. My father had gone completely pale. I never wanted you expelled, he whispered. I just thought you needed discipline boundaries. I told him to document any legitimate infractions, not to create false ones. But you didn't defend me, I said. When I was accused, when I told you it was false, you chose to believe a colleague over your daughter. I was protecting our family name. I am the family name, I shouted, finally losing my composure. I was your daughter. I needed your protection, not your judgment. The room fell silent. I took a deep breath, regaining control. I lived in my car for 2 weeks after you threw me out. Did you know that? Did you ever wonder where I went? Or if I was safe? My mother covered her face with her hands. Dorothy, please. It's Dot. I corrected again, more firmly this time. Dorothy Wright no longer exists. I had to rebuild myself from nothing because my family abandoned me. Madison moved to my side, taking my hand. I looked for you, she said quietly. After about a month, when things calmed down, I tried to find you. Your phone was disconnected. Your email bounced back. No one knew where you'd gone. I had to disappear to survive, I explained. I changed my name, legally created a new identity. The only connection to my past is the algorithm that started everything. Travis checked his watch. The university board is convening an emergency session in 20 minutes. They've requested your presence. I nodded. I'll be there. I turned back to my family. I have a university to hold accountable now. We'll have to continue this conversation later. Please, my mother said desperately. Don't disappear again. Whatever you think of us, whatever mistakes we made, and they were terrible mistakes, you're still our daughter. Am I? I asked. 5 years ago, I was an embarrassment. Remember, now I'm a successful CEO whose connection might benefit the right reputation. Which version of me is actually your daughter? My father stood abruptly. This isn't fair. You've had 5 years to process this, to build your case against us. We're just learning the truth today. And whose fault is that? Madison interjected. You wouldn't even let us mention Dot's name in the house. You threw away her photographs. Every time I tried to talk about finding her, you shut me down. My father looked genuinely shocked at Madison's outburst. I was trying to help you move forward, he protested. To focus on your own future, not be dragged down by her situation. Her situation was our failure, my mother said quietly. All of ours. We failed Dot completely. And then, we tried to erase her, to avoid facing that truth. Something in my mother's words reached a place inside me I'd thought was permanently closed. Her acknowledgement of failure, collective failure, not just my alleged mistakes, felt like the first honest thing I'd heard from my family in 5 years. I have to go, I said, gathering my folder. The board is waiting. When can we see you again? Madison asked anxiously. Please don't disappear for another 5 years. I hesitated, torn between self-protection and the unexpected longing for reconciliation. I'm staying at the Westridge Grand through Sunday. We can talk tomorrow afternoon. As Travis and I walked toward the door, my father finally spoke again. Dot, he said, the nickname sounding strange in his formal voice. I was wrong. Completely wrong. About everything. I turned, studying the man who had shaped so much of my life. First through his approval, then through his rejection. He looked older, suddenly diminished. Yes, I agreed simply. You were. As the door closed behind us, I heard Madison's voice raised in anger. My mother's sobs, my father's defensive tone. The Wright family was facing its reckoning at last. Travis looked at me with concern. Are you okay? I took a deep breath, straightening my shoulders. Ask me tomorrow. Right now we have a university board to educate about academic integrity. As we walked across campus, I felt lighter somehow. Not healed. Not forgiven. But finally, after 5 years, acknowledged. The university board meeting lasted until nearly midnight. By the time it concluded, several decisions had been made. Professor Larkin was placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. My academic record would be fully cleared, with a formal apology issued, and the Innosphere partnership would proceed with the addition of the Ethics in Academia program as a centerpiece. Dean Carson, looking exhausted and 20 years older, had personally apologized. We failed in our fundamental duty to ensure justice for our students, he admitted. There's no excuse for the cursory investigation that led to your expulsion. The next morning, my hotel phone rang at 7 a.m. It was Madison. Can we have breakfast? She asked without preamble. Just you and me. We met in the hotel restaurant 30 minutes later. Madison looked like she hadn't slept. Her graduation excitement replaced by emotional exhaustion. Mom and Dad had the worst fight I've ever seen last night, she said after ordering coffee. Dad actually moved to a hotel. I think they might separate. I'm sorry, I said, surprised to find I meant it. That wasn't my intention. Madison shook her head. It's been coming for years. Mom never really forgave him after you left. Though she never said it directly. There's been this silence between them. Last night it finally broke. And how are you doing with all this? I asked. Honestly, I'm still processing. One day I'm just a graduating senior. The next day my long-lost sister returns as a tech CEO to expose a university scandal. She attempted a smile. It's a lot. I never meant to overshadow your graduation. Are you kidding? You gave me the best graduation gift possible, the truth. And paying off my student loans wasn't bad either. I nearly choked on my coffee. How did you know about that? The financial aid office called to confirm my contact information for the grant paperwork. The director mentioned how unusual it was to receive an anonymous donation, specifically targeting one student's loans. I took a guess that it might be you. She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Thank you. That was incredibly generous. You're welcome, I said, feeling oddly exposed. It seemed like the right thing to do. We talked through breakfast, 5 years of separation, gradually giving way to tentative reconnection. Madison told me about her research, her plans for graduate school, her friends. I shared stories about Inosphere's early days, carefully edited to minimize the hardships. What happens now? Madison asked, as we finished our meal. With the university, with Professor Larkin with us. The university will make this right, or face significant legal consequences, I said. Professor Larkin's academic career is effectively over. As for us, I paused, uncertain how to proceed. I'd like to know my sister again, Madison said simply. If you're willing. Something warm unfurled in my chest. Hope, perhaps, or the beginning of forgiveness. I'd like that too. After breakfast, I met with university lawyers to formalize the agreements reached the previous night. By noon, I was officially no longer an expelled student, but a Westridge alumna with a clean record. Dean Carson also presented me with an honorary doctorate in computer science. A gesture that felt both inadequate and strangely healing. At 2 o'clock, my parents arrived at my hotel suite separately. My mother came first, nervous but determined. I've left your father, she announced without preamble. Not just because of last night, but because I've been complicit in his controlling behavior for too long. What he did to you forced me to see what I've been ignoring for decades. Mom, you don't have to. I do, she interrupted. I should have defended you 5 years ago. Instead, I stood by while he threw you out. I can't change that. But I can change what I do now. My father arrived 20 minutes later, looking like he'd aged a decade overnight. Gone was the imperious surgeon, replaced by a man confronting the consequences of his actions for perhaps the first time. The Board of Trustees called me this morning, he said, declining my offer of a seat. My position as an alumni advisor has been terminated, and my name is being removed from the neuroscience wing I funded. I'm sorry, I said automatically. He shook his head. No, don't be. It's appropriate. I abused my influence once. They're ensuring I can't do it again. He took a deep breath. I've also taken a leave of absence from my practice. I'm seeking help for my issues with control and authority. I didn't know how to respond to this vulnerability from a man who had always projected nothing but strength and certainty. I don't expect forgiveness, he continued. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I recognize the gravity of what I did. The recording yesterday, hearing Alan actually admit to fabricating evidence, it destroyed the last of my denials. It's going to take time, I said carefully. I can't just forget the last 5 years. I wouldn't expect you to. But perhaps we could begin some kind of communication. Email? Occasional phone calls? It was the most humble I'd ever seen him. I nodded slowly. I think I could manage that. 3 days later, Travis and I were back in our offices at Inosphere. The company was buzzing with news of the Westridge partnership and the dramatic circumstances surrounding it. I'd been forced to share an abbreviated version of my history with the executive team, who had responded with shock support and fierce loyalty. The marketing department wants to know if we should issue a press release about your exoneration, Travis said, reviewing messages at my desk. No press release, I decided, but update my official bio to include my connection to Westridge. No need to hide it anymore. And the second chance scholarship, still anonymous. I considered this. No. Put my name on it. Maybe it will help other students in similar situations. No, they're not alone. As we finished reviewing the day's agenda, my assistant announced a visitor, Madison. She entered my office hesitantly, taking in the downtown views and sleek furnishings. So, this is where the magic happens, she said. What brings you here? I asked, genuinely surprised. I thought you were flying to Boston tomorrow to look at apartments before grad school. I am. But first I wanted to ask you something. She took a deep breath. Inosphere has a summer internship program, right? For graduate students. I exchanged a glance with Travis. We do. I want to apply. Not because we're sisters, she added quickly. I'll go through the regular application process. But I want to learn from you. The real you, not the imaginary failure Dad created in his narrative. Madison, you have a fellowship at MIT. That's an incredible opportunity. I know. And I'm taking it. But for the summer, before classes start. She smiled tentatively. I've spent 5 years trying to live up to the ghost of my brilliant sister. I'd like to spend a few months getting to know the real thing. Travis excused himself discreetly, leaving us alone. It won't be easy, I warned. People will talk. Some will claim nepotism no matter how qualified you are. I can handle it if you can, she replied. I'm a Wright. Remember? Or whatever last name you're using these days. I laughed despite myself. Walsh professionally. But I'm still a Wright by birth, for better or worse. Definitely for better, Madison said firmly. 2 months later, Madison joined Innosphere as a summer graduate fellow. Her credentials were impeccable. Her interview scores top tier. There was no need for family connection to justify her position. She threw herself into the work with enthusiasm and insight that impressed even our most senior engineers. Meanwhile, the changes at Westridge University continued to unfold. Professor Larkin resigned before the investigation concluded. Though the university released their findings anyway, multiple instances of academic misconduct and abuse of power spanning more than a decade. The Ethics in Academia program was implemented with immediate effect, with special emphasis on fair procedures for academic integrity cases. My mother filed for divorce and began volunteering at a women's shelter, finding purpose in helping others rebuild their lives. My father continued therapy and gradually, painfully worked to address his controlling tendencies. Our relationship remained cautious, but slowly improving through regular brief phone calls. As summer turned to fall, Madison prepared to leave for MIT. On her last day at Innosphere, I invited her to dinner at my apartment, the first family member to see where I lived. "This place is amazing!" she exclaimed, taking in the spacious rooms and modern art, though it needs more personal touches. "Where are your photos?" Mementos. I realized she was right. Despite living here for nearly 2 years, the apartment was still essentially a showcase, perfectly decorated but revealing nothing about its occupant. I guess I never fully moved in, I admitted. Part of me was always ready to leave again if necessary. Madison opened her bag and pulled out a small wrapped package. Then this is perfect timing. A housewarming gift. Inside was a silver frame containing a photograph I hadn't seen in years. Madison and me as teenagers, arms around each other's shoulders, laughing at something now forgotten. "Where did you get this?" I asked, throat tight with unexpected emotion. "Dad threw away all the photos." "He tried," Madison confirmed. "But I rescued some from the trash. I've kept them hidden all these years." I placed the frame on my mantel where it stood out starkly against the impersonal decor, a single authentic piece in a carefully constructed life. "It's a start," Madison said, smiling. Later that week, Travis and I hosted a dinner for the Innosphere leadership team to celebrate both Madison's successful fellowship and our expanded university partnerships. During the meal, Travis clinked his glass for attention. "I'd like to propose a toast," he announced, to second chances. Whether they're second chances at education, at career paths, at relationships. He glanced meaningfully at me, or at family. The team raised their glasses, unaware of the personal significance his words held for me. As conversations resumed around us, Travis leaned closer. "Speaking of second chances," he said quietly, "would you consider having dinner with me sometime? Just the two of us, not talking about work?" I stared at him, startled. "Are you asking me out?" "I've been trying to for about 1.5 years," he admitted with a rueful smile. "You've been particularly dense about it." I thought about all the late nights working together, the unwavering support, the way he'd stood beside me at Westridge without hesitation. Perhaps I'd been deliberately blind to what was developing between us, too afraid to trust again. "I'd like that," I said finally. "Dinner. Just the two of us." His smile was worth every moment of uncertainty. 3 months later, I stood on another university stage, this time at MIT, where I'd been invited to speak about women in technology leadership. Madison sat in the front row, beaming with pride as I shared a carefully edited version of my journey from student to CEO. Resilience isn't just about surviving hardship, I told the audience. It's about maintaining your integrity even when others question it. It's about finding strength in vulnerability and wisdom in failure. Most importantly, it's about offering others the compassion and second chances you wish you'd received yourself. As I concluded my speech to enthusiastic applause, I caught sight of two unexpected figures in the back row. My parents sitting not together, but near each other, both watching me, with expressions of unmistakable pride. They had come. Not because I was an embarrassment, not because I was a success, but simply because I was their daughter. After the reception, we gathered awkwardly in the lobby, the four rights together for the first time in more than 5 years. My father cleared his throat. "That was an excellent speech," he said formally, then added with visible effort, "I'm proud of you, Dot." Those 5 words, "I'm proud of you, Dot," washed over me like a healing balm. Not because I still needed his approval, but because they signified how far we had all come. Later that evening, I called Travis from my hotel room. "How did it go?" he asked. "Better than I expected," I admitted. "We're having brunch together tomorrow before I fly back. All 4 of us." "That's wonderful, Dot. I'm happy for you." It's strange, I reflected. 5 years ago, I thought I'd lost everything. My education, my family, my future. But now I have Inosphere. I have you. I have Madison back in my life. And I'm even building some kind of new relationship with my parents. "You turned pain into purpose," Travis said. "That's your superpower." The next morning as I joined my family for brunch, I realized Travis was right. The pain hadn't disappeared. Some wounds leave permanent scars, but it had transformed into something constructive. The betrayal had taught me resilience. The rejection had taught me self-reliance. The loss had taught me the true value of connection. My father, still struggling with old habits, but genuinely trying, attempted a joke about having a CEO in the family. My mother, more confident in her newly independent life, gently corrected him. Madison rolled her eyes at both of them, then winked at me conspiratorially. We were imperfect. We were still healing. But we were family again, in a new and more authentic way. As we parted at the restaurant, my father awkwardly offered his hand. I hesitated, then stepped forward and hugged him instead. He stiffened momentarily, before returning the embrace, his arms tentative, as if afraid I might disappear again. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving us another chance." "Second chances are kind of my specialty now," I replied. Back at Inosphere the following week, I officially launched our Expanded Ethics in Academia initiative, now partnering with 12 universities nationwide. The program would ensure fair processes for academic integrity cases and provide support for students facing wrongful accusations. Travis joined me at the press announcement, standing supportively at my side as I shared my vision for changing how academic institutions handle disciplinary procedures. 5 years ago, I stood outside a university, banned from attending my own classes because of false accusations, I told the reporters. Today, I stand before you as proof that failure isn't final, that rejection isn't defining, and that the truth eventually finds its way to the light. A reporter raised her hand. "Miss Walsh, what would you say to students currently facing similar situations?" I thought carefully before answering. I would tell them that your worth isn't determined by an institution's judgment or even a family's acceptance. It's determined by your own integrity, perseverance, and the good you bring into the world. The darkest moments can become the foundation for your greatest strength if you refuse to let them define you. That evening, I added a second photograph to my mantle. The 4 rights at brunch. Awkward but trying. Imperfect but reconciling. Next to it, I placed the framed email from Professor Larkin that had once been my greatest wound and motivation. Now it was simply a reminder of how far I'd come. My phone chimed with a message from Travis. "Dinner tonight. I made reservations at that new place you mentioned." I smiled and replied affirmatively, then gazed once more at the family photo. The journey from rejection to redemption hadn't been easy or straight. There had been moments when giving up seemed logical, when bitterness felt justified, when forgiveness seemed impossible. But standing in my home, a home that finally felt like mine. I understood that true success wasn't measured in titles or bank accounts or even academic vindication. It was measured in the courage to remain true to yourself when others doubt you, the strength to rebuild when everything collapses, and the wisdom to offer grace when it hasn't always been extended to you. Have you ever faced rejection from those who should have supported you the most? How did you find the strength to rebuild and prove your worth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey of perseverance and redemption resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share with someone who might need to hear that their current struggles aren't the end of their story. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the greatest success stories begin with the words, "You're an embarrassment. Don't show up."